Tonight's presentation of SAA Storytellers is made possible with support from Bristol Myers Squibb.
Welcome, and thank you for attending. Also, for all of those who will be watching the archived version of this presentation on the SAA YouTube channel, welcome. SAA Storytellers, Your Stories on Stage, is a virtual community storytelling show that is an extension of the community stories featured in our quarterly news magazine, Spondylitis Plus. A special thank you to Bristol Myers Squibb, who have helped make this space possible. The stories presented here are pre-recorded, but we are gathering live tonight to celebrate the power of healing and the spondylitis community. Tonight's storytellers are Sarah Gustwiller, Whitney Young, Alex Lavine, and Tracy Francis. Please post comments before, during, and after the stories. Since our founding in 1983, the Spondylitis Association of America has been the face, the voice, and the leading nationwide nonprofit organization educating, empowering, and advocating for people living with spondyloarthritis. Our mission is to be a leader in the quest to cure ankylosing spondylitis and related diseases, and to empower those affected to live their lives to the fullest. SAA has many resources. Just click on the link in the chat to learn more. Okay, so let's get started. Our first storyteller tonight is Sarah Gustwiller. Sarah lives in a small town in the foothills of the Appalachians in rural Northeast Ohio. They have a lovely daughter who has given them two beautiful grandchildren. They love to travel together as a family. Sarah spends her time singing, playing clarinet, bass clarinet, crocheting, crafting, working on the family house. Sarah also co-leads SAA's Pittsburgh support group. She became interested in leading a support group because of the amazing connection she found with another Spondy. They met on Facebook on an AS support page and eventually met in real life. They've been close friends for years. Let's hear her story.
From the time I was a small child, the only thing I ever wanted to be was a singer. There's even a picture of tiny little 3-year-old Sarah clad in a strawberry shortcake pinafore, holding my little Casio cassette player with the microphone up and just singing at the top of my lungs at the tender age of 3. And from the time that I heard, or that I learned about musical theater, Broadway became my goal. But my body had other plans. My first symptom that something was wrong was actually when I was still a baby. Just before I turned 2 years old, I experienced uveitis for the first time. The youngest person I've ever heard of with it. And by the time I was 7 years old, pain had started in my hands. And I was diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. To try to help with it, my mom put me in piano and clarinet lessons to try to keep my fingers limber, which just increased my love of music all the more. By the time I was in junior high school, I had some digestive issues that warranted a diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome. By the time I was a sophomore in high school, my knees started swelling and having a lot of pain. So I got my first rheumatologist who diagnosed me with chondromalacia patella. And up until that point, I had been taking 5 dance classes a week. Like I said, I had the goal of being on Broadway in musical theater, so I was actively going toward that. But this diagnosis of chondromalacia patella meant that I had to kind of back off of that a little bit and go for some less aggressive styles of dance. By my junior year, I had a diagnosis of TMJ. And all the while, I'm still setting goals to be a musician. I'm going to college to become a professional singer and clarinet player, while also having surgeries, breaking an occasional bone, and having far more tests than any child of that age should have. When I moved away to college, I met my husband, and I found a new rheumatologist because I went to college 3 hours away from my home. And my new rheumatologist was able to put the pieces together. He looked at all these different individual diagnoses and came up with a theory. He asked if he could x-ray my lower lumbar and sacral area. And of course, I gave him the permission to do that. And within about 20 minutes, I had a diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis. A few months later, while still trying to come to terms with this diagnosis that no one ever saw coming, I was unfortunately involved in a very minor car accident. It was no more than a fender bender. But it was enough to cause problems for me, even though everyone else was fine. After the car accident was over, my friends and I actually ended up going to a grocery store and walking around for about an hour before the pain in my neck grew to the point that I couldn't take it anymore. And I told my boyfriend, who is now my husband, I think I need to go to the hospital. So he took me. And the first ER that we went to just sort of said, oh, well, you have ankylosing spondylitis, so you're going to feel this a lot more than an average person. Just go home. You're fine. About an hour later, after getting home, I decided that it really wasn't fine. The pain was getting even more intense. So I went to a different ER where that hospital took it more seriously, did some imaging, and found out that I actually had a fracture in my neck, my cervical spine. That caused the biggest flare-up that I'd ever had in my entire life. My rheumatologist put me on a high dose of steroids for an extended period of time while I was recovering from that bone break. And that caused extreme weight gain, which I've never really been able to take off. And both of those things kind of derailed my plan to continue into musical theater, because now my body just would not allow me to do the physicality that is required to be a professional Broadway style performer. So I had to find a new purpose in my life. And I ended up getting a job as a bookkeeper. And I found that I actually really enjoy accounting. So I kind of transitioned my love for music into less of a professional space and into more of a volunteer type of gig for me. Which actually is a far better fit, because in order to be a professional musician, you have to deal with constant rejection. You can audition for 100 different things and maybe get one or two. You might not get anything in 100 auditions. So it's a struggle, and I don't have to put up with that. I can volunteer and play the gigs that I want to play because it's a volunteer basis for the most part. I do an occasional professional gig, but it's not my career. I don't have to make a living on it. And it also freed up my life so that my husband and I have more freedom to do the things that we want to do, like travel with each other and that sort of thing. Because of my autoimmune issues, I also had trouble with carrying a child, which led my husband and me into foster care. And now I have a lovely adopted daughter who has given us 3 beautiful grandchildren. And I do volunteer for music organizations in my me time. And I decided to go back to school. So I'm actually expanding my knowledge base for my accounting profession. And I'm expanding into some nonprofit sides with some grant writing. So while my life looks nothing like what I thought it would when I was a small child, having this disease kind of derail me in my younger years has turned my life into something far more beautiful than I ever imagined it could possibly be.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sean. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for doing this. I know we've been working together for a while, and we got it together, and you told a beautiful story. So thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your medical history. So I want to talk a little bit about your hands. You had mentioned something about your hands, and are there any crafts or anything you do to keep your hands busy to help you?
Well, I certainly do. I do still play clarinet and bass clarinet, but that isn't something that I can easily take with me to do in different places without driving people crazy for playing music all the time. So I love to crochet, and I do usually have a crochet project with me wherever I go.
So what are some of the things you've crocheted?
I love to do blankets, especially baby blankets, but I also make up boxes of hats that I donate to a local hospice center.
Wonderful. So you actually have turned this into a little industry.
Yeah, in a way, yes.
I love that. Okay, you also mentioned that you travel, and what's it like traveling with AS?
Well, you definitely have to keep your limitations in mind. My husband loves to hike, and there are certain hikes that I can't even begin to think to do because my feet can't handle it, my ankles and my knees. So we tend to look for vacation spots where there are walking trails nearby, so that there are hikes that are easy enough for us to do together. And then we also have to consider things like if we're going to be staying at a bed and breakfast, we try to make sure that there's handicapped accessibility. So either we get a room on the first floor, or they have some type of stair lift or elevator in case it's needed on that particular day. So we do take some extra precautions just to make sure that everyone's comfortable.
Absolutely. It's really good advice as well. And also, changing gears a little bit, but not too much, you are a support group leader for the Pittsburgh group. Tell me what it's like being a support group leader. Have you learned anything yourself? Is it interesting being on the other side? Would you suggest that someone else be a support group leader and, step up to that kind of role? What do you think?
For sure. If that's something that has kind of been on your heart or on your mind, it's very, very fulfilling. And one of the best things about being in a support group is just having other people in your court who know exactly what it is you're going through and are experiencing it with you, because AS is still a relatively rare diagnosis, even though it is very common, because it's misdiagnosed a lot. And a lot of people who have it don't really like to talk about it because people don't know what it is. So by joining a support group, you find a community of people who really understand what you're going through. And it really, really helps with those really difficult days where your pain level is really high and you're just sad because your body isn't cooperating and doing the things you want it to do. And being a support group leader has just enriched some of those friendships. And I've learned so many tips from other people in my support group for different ways that they cope through life, and different hacks for doing things like cleaning your house, for example.
Absolutely.
It's really wonderful.
That was very well said. You've said that before, haven't you?
Well, not exactly that, but I do think about it a lot.
So lastly, to sort of dovetail on the support and attending a support group and all that good stuff, what is a word or a phrase you would give someone who is newly diagnosed?
There are actually two things that I would tell someone who's newly diagnosed. The first thing is let yourself not be okay. It's okay to not be okay every day. You're going to have days where your pain level is worse and your body's not going to cooperate, and that's okay. And the second thing that I like to tell people is learn your limitations, because if you do too much, you might wind up in a point where you have created a flare up of symptoms that's going to make you feel horrible for a few days. So there's sort of a sweet spot where you are doing enough to keep yourself limber and to do enough for your body without going over that threshold that's going to turn you the opposite direction into a flare. So learning where that threshold is difficult, but it's important.
So it sounds like people should be students of spoon theory.
Yes, absolutely. I love spoon theory.
Mm-hmm. Spoon theory is great. I use spoon theory. I love spoon theory.
So
yes, that was very well spoken.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being on SAA Storytellers. I know we talked about this a long time ago. We finally all got it together, and it's been so much fun working with you on your story and having this interview with you and learning more about you. And thank you so much for everything you do for SAA.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you so much, Sean.
A big thank you to Sarah for sharing her inspiring story and being part of SAA Storytellers. I had mentioned that Sarah is an SAA support group leader. SAA Spondyloarthritis Educational Support Groups are a network of people living with and taking an active role in managing their disease. All are welcome, including parents, caregivers, loved ones, anyone living with spondyloarthritis. I'll put a link in the chat that explains more about the support group program. Okay, our next storyteller is Whitney Young. Whitney comes from a big family, and they are very close. She's the youngest of 4 daughters and the youngest of 23 grandchildren on her father's side, in addition to another 8 first cousins on her mother's side. She was raised in the mountains of Colorado and was an avid softball player growing up. She also played 4 years of Division I college softball. Whitney holds an undergraduate degree in bioengineering from the University of Toledo and a master's in biomechanical engineering from MIT. She has lived in Colorado, Toledo, Ohio, and the surrounding areas of Boston, Massachusetts. She loves traveling, and she has been to more than 10 countries. Let's hear her story.
I may be new to AS, but I'm no stranger to back pain. I first saw a doctor for low back pain that would wake me up in the middle of the night back in 2013 when I was just 24 years old. They ran me through all the standard things. My MRI didn't show anything. I started PT. I saw some improvement, I thought, but then a year later, I was back at the same pain specialist with similar symptoms. I was again told nothing was wrong with me and I should do more PT and yoga, read a book about back pain. I did all of that and more. Not really being satisfied with the help I was receiving from medical doctors, I decided to start trying troubleshooting this pain on my own. I worked with massage therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. I tried adding new exercises to my regime, tried taking some out. Just when I would think I was improving or something was helping, I'd be struck by debilitating pain, particularly in the middle of the night. Now, I'm a methodical and logical thinker by nature and an engineer by training, so I thought maybe I could math and science my way to a solution to this pain. So I created this huge matrix with all sorts of different factors that I religiously tracked every morning and night. I monitored what type of exercise I did, if I drank any alcohol, how many hours of sleep I got, what side of my body I fell asleep on, which side I woke up on, if I'd had any interventions that day, what my stress level was, what my pain level was, and on and on and on. I recorded all this information for months, sure that I'd be able to compile the data and figure out what caused my pain and what helped. But much to my dismay, when I started parsing through the data, I couldn't find any clear patterns. It made no sense. I would go from being fine, hiking, skiing, traveling, to being in such extreme pain that I couldn't sleep for more than a couple of hours and could hardly move. I really hit a low in 2016 when I was on a work trip. It was something I had been looking forward to. I'd been given an opportunity to lead a team for the first time, and we'd been preparing for this field test for months. Before leaving, I had noticed that my pain was starting to increase, but I just pushed through, almost trying to will away the pain. Only compounding the problem was the fact that I had to take a 6-hour flight from Boston to Seattle. So by the time I got to the West Coast, things went downhill pretty quickly. I tried ignoring it. I took some leave because sometimes that helped, but the pain had gotten too far out of control. I made it through the first day of testing, but by that night, I was in tears, and the only position that was remotely comfortable was laying on my back on the hotel floor. Unfortunately, as it turned out, once I got down there, I couldn't get myself back up. So I had to get a hold of a coworker to come in and basically pick me up off the floor. Later that night, being unable to sleep, I ended up calling an Uber to take me to the emergency room at like 2 a.m. The doctors there, I wouldn't say were overly helpful, but they did manage to calm me down enough so that I could at least get a couple hours of sleep. But the next night was just as bad, and I went back to the ER. I just didn't know what else to do. Over the next 8 years, I continued to seek answers, knowing that something was wrong, even if the doctors weren't finding it. But it was hard to describe to doctors that at my best, I could trek to Everest Base Camp and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. But at my worst, I couldn't sleep in bed for more than 3 hours, and I couldn't even put my own hair up into a ponytail, couldn't get myself up off the floor. It was hard for my friends and family, not because they didn't believe my pain, but because they didn't know how to help me. And it was really hard because I never knew when my pain was going to show up. Now, I did see some doctors who found fixable problems. I've had both labrums in my hips repaired and both of my SI joints fused. And as unfun as all these surgeries have been, I had hope that getting them done would lead me to being pain-free. So this past spring, not 6 weeks after my second SI joint fusion and fourth surgery in as many years, I was beyond frustrated when my back started hurting again. How could this be possible? I fixed everything the doctors told me to fix. I followed the rehab protocols to a T. Where was this coming from? Desperate and couch-bound, I started Googling. And my search eventually led me to AS. I fit the description perfectly. And at that moment, I realized that what I had been experiencing over the last 12 years were called flares. It started to make a little bit of sense. Getting the official diagnosis sent me on a roller coaster of emotions. I was mad that it took 12 years and 10 plus doctors before I got any real answers. I was sad to be diagnosed with an incurable disease. But honestly, after a couple of weeks, I started to feel some relief also. It felt good knowing that it wasn't all in my head. I do have something wrong. And while AS isn't curable or even predictable, there is comfort for me in knowing what I'm dealing with. I know I'll have more flares, more pain to deal with, but I can approach it a little differently now. I can give myself some grace when things get bad, not try to will it away or ignore it or push through it. And I can explain it to those around me and offer them better ways to help. I've started on a biologic as well, and I'm hopeful that that brings relief. But overall, I now know that this is just something I'll have to manage for the rest of my life. And I'm not particularly excited about that, but I do at least feel more prepared than I did during those 12 years with no answers. And I'm more thankful than ever to have such a strong support system of family and friends around me to help.
Hi, Whitney.
Hi, Sean.
Thank you so much for being on SAA Storytellers. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a really cool opportunity.
Awesome. And I know we've had some really great chats, and you told me a little bit about travel and camping. Tell me some of your passions.
Yeah, I love all things related to the mountains. So camping, hiking, mountain biking, skiing. If I can be outside, I'm all in.
And so you did mention, like I had asked you, having AS and doing these activities. Have you had to adapt, or is there anything, embarrassing or funny or something that's happened,
Oh, I've definitely had to adapt some. My friends give me a hard time about how I go car camping because you would think I'm staying in like a 5-star hotel. I have a really thick mattress that I bring with me that's insulated and very comfortable. I need a 4-person tent just for me so I can fit all of my stuff. And then hiking, I like to climb big mountains in Colorado. There's things called 14ers, 14,000 foot peaks that I really like to climb. But it gets really cold up at high altitude. And I also have Raynaud's as a part of my AS. So that can be quite the challenge while I hike. I think I carry 3 different levels of gloves with me for the various altitudes that I get to. And people who go hiking with me just know that most likely at some point they're going to either have to zip my jacket for me or maybe tie my shoes, because I tend to lose feeling in my fingers by the time I get up there. And I actually had to ask a stranger on top of a mountain one time to zip up my jacket because I was just so cold and I knew I needed the coat, but I couldn't make my fingers work. But they helped me. It was no problem. And then I warmed up.
Does anyone carry your bag for you? I don't know if I asked you that or not. Did anyone carry your backpack, or do you do it?
I carry my backpack. I actually carry more than I think anyone else that I hike with, because I have to have all the layers. And if I try to really balance not sweating, but not being too cold. And I usually lose the battle, but I do at least try.
Mm-hmm. I admire that you have stuck to your passion as best you can and adapted. And we hear the theme of adaptation a lot on this show. So thank you for bringing that forward. Now, to switch gears just a little bit. So for someone who is newly diagnosed or starting on this journey or is just trying to figure out what's going on, what are some words of wisdom or a short phrase you would tell them?
I think the biggest thing I've learned through all of this is you are the only person who has all the information. So advocate for yourself and keep going until you find someone who can help you.
I love that. And thank you so much for saying that. Also, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your passion for camping and sharing your story, which I am so touched that you spent time with us to tell all that. So thank you. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Many thanks to Whitney for sharing her personal story with such honesty and being part of this project. I also want to share that SAA doesn't receive any government funding and relies on private donations. Funds received help sustain programs like our National Support Group program. I'll put a link in the chat to our donation page if you'd like to help SAA fulfill its mission. You can also volunteer, give a gift in memory or tribute, coordinate a matching gift from your employer, or include SAA in a planned gift. There are so many ways you can help SAA. Okay. Our next storyteller is Alex Lavine. Alex owns and operates a virtual personal training business, Alex Lavine Fitness, LLC, which specializes in one-on-one personal training for those with ankylosing spondylitis and axial spondyloarthritis around the world. He's a certified personal trainer, fitness nutrition specialist, and senior fitness specialist through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. He also holds a master's degree in sports leadership from Northeastern University. Let's hear his story.
The internal struggle of being a personal trainer and an athlete with ankylosing spondylitis. Pain became a far too common theme in my life. Playing through pain, pushing through the pain. In my early 20s, when I first started experiencing symptoms from ankylosing spondylitis, which I didn't know was ankylosing spondylitis, my whole life was consumed by sports, fitness. I was working in sports. I was working in youth sports, teaching fitness classes. I was also a youth basketball coach, and my hobbies were all sports. All I did mostly was play basketball. That's where my friends were. That's my community. And I was faced with this issue where one day a little bit of hip pain came on, and the hip pain turned into pretty bad hip pain, which a lot of us experience. And these symptoms kind of came out of nowhere, right? I was feeling pretty good. But the confusing part was on a Tuesday, I could be an incredible athlete. I could be playing basketball and I could be one of the best players there. But on a Thursday, maybe I'm limping around from hip pain and I'm the worst player there. So confusion was the first thing where I started to say, maybe I don't know how to play sports the right way. Maybe I don't know how to run the right way. Is something wrong with me? And during this time, all I knew from growing up in sports and playing sports was keep pushing through the pain, keep playing, play as hard as I can. Maybe I'm not playing hard enough. So this is when I started to really question really everything about my life. My whole identity was sports, especially playing basketball and coaching basketball. That was my identity. So when I started limping around, showing exercises for kids and limping around trying to play basketball, I started to really second guess maybe this isn't the career for me. The more I searched and looked for answers to this, and when I couldn't find them and I couldn't really find out what was going on, this made things worse, right? I was confused and didn't know what to do. So again, all I knew was keep pushing through the pain, keep playing harder. Maybe I am not in good enough shape. So the second guessing went on for a while. Again, sometimes I felt great. I would play basketball, I'd be really good, and other times I'd be really bad. But I kept playing because I couldn't give it up. You know, sports, again, were my identity. Working in sports were my identity, and I couldn't give it up at the time. So this went on for years, a couple of years, 2-3 years. I'm now about 25 years old, and this was when everything hit, rock bottom. I had actually caused some injuries because I kept pushing through the pain, through the stiffness, not knowing what it was. So I kept trying to play and work out and lift weights and play basketball. And I caused a shoulder injury. I caused a hip injury. And now I couldn't do anything. Now I was really just laying around the house, feeling pretty sorry for myself. I was in a pretty bad place because, again, at least I was still playing, right? I was feeling good some days, so I still had hope. But now I was just laying around feeling horrible about myself. And during this time is when I got an x-ray done because of the injuries, and the doctor picked up the SI joints on the x-rays, and it showed sacroiliitis. So immediately the doctor said, let's look into some further testing for ankylosing spondylitis. It was just like that. I saw the notes after I got the testing done, and I looked up ankylosing spondylitis, and I thought, whoa, that's I wasn't expecting that, but I was expecting something. Eventually, I was expecting something because of the pain that I had been going through, and the fact that I still felt great on some days, but then I would feel horrible. It didn't make sense. So once I got the official diagnosis, again, I was relieved a little bit, but at the same time, you hear ankylosing spondylitis and you hear what type of condition this is. I was just so worried and fearful. And again, the second guessing about, can I still work in sports and fitness? But during this time when I couldn't do anything, I couldn't play basketball because of my injuries. I was officially sidelined from really doing anything. I was trying to figure out my career. And during this time is when I realized I have to do something differently here. You know, pushing through the pain, pushing through these symptoms what I had done previously, that wasn't doing it for me. That was causing me to not like sports, not like fitness anymore. So rock bottom is when I started to search for different things, stretching. I was trying, honestly, I was looking across fitness, across movement. I was going to physical therapy, and I was finding things just that felt good. I just wanted to feel better, started walking more, started stretching, started doing yoga, started using the sauna, started eating better. I just had to get out of this spot where I just had to start moving again. I just had to get started. And this was the time that really transformed my identity in sports. I thought I knew everything I needed to know in my early 20s about personal training and fitness. I knew nothing. This is what taught me everything about how we progress fitness, how we get healthier, and ultimately how we adapt to fitness. And that became my motto, and eventually that became my business, where I focused on personal training for everybody, for folks who were struggling to get moving, because that was me for a long time. And I was moving, but I wasn't doing it the right way. I wasn't listening to the pain. I was pushing through the pain. So eventually I learned how to adapt and how to keep going. And that's my story with ankylosing spondylitis.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Sean.
Thank you so much for being on SAA Storytellers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. So I have a quick question for you. We were talking a little bit about things you can do that are kind of easy to help your body. And I think you had a suggestion, something you'd like to do.
Absolutely. I found that when I was struggling with a symptom, hip pain, something that resting wasn't doing everything it could for me. So I wanted to get moving. I wanted to get into some healthy behaviors, and using the sauna kind of became something I could turn to. All right, I can go to the gym, I can get in the sauna, and I can release some energy that way. I can get sweating in the sauna and start feeling a little better. So that became my motto around trying to keep going when we want to keep movement going. We want to keep the body loose and active. So something like the sauna became a great tool for me.
So I know this is kind of a weird question, but are some saunas better than others?
They're all good. There's the wet versus the dry. I think it's really preference. Some people just like the feel of them differently, but they're all different, especially if you're in a different country. In Europe, there are like sauna enthusiasts there, where everyone seems to be doing the sauna in, Sweden and Finland, but they're all great.
Is this also a tip you would use for people traveling if they run into some problems while on a trip, to like find a sauna?
I think find a sauna, you bring some resistance bands if you have them, just to keep movement going, keep kind of some strength training and stretching going. I tend to carry all these things with me, resistance bands, wherever I go, just to keep some, the body moving as always.
I just started bringing resistance bands when I travel.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, it has like changed my trips.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I prefer the resistance bands over weights for a lot of different movements, to get a little more blood flow and circulation and get some more repetitions to kind of fuel the body, energize it while we're getting some strength training. So an incredible tool, whoever came up with the resistance bands, but you'll find them nowadays extremely popular piece of equipment.
Yeah, and they're cheap too. I got them mine were on Amazon.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is your business, because your business is thriving and you help so many people living with AS. I'll be sure to put a link in the chat to your business so people can learn more about you, but maybe a little bit about your business, maybe how it's changed you a bit, or, changed how you work out, or I don't know, show off.
Yeah. Thanks so much for those kind words.
Of course.
I started the business because when I was struggling, I truly didn't know how to get started, get out of it. I couldn't work out without pain, truly. And I had a background in fitness, which you would think I would have figured it out, but I didn't know I had ankylosing spondylitis. I wasn't familiar with the symptoms at such a young age. So once I became aware of the symptoms and how we can use exercise and movement and stretching to help our symptoms, I learned I could adapt to fitness and use, like we're talking about the resistance bands, I learned I could use all these different techniques. I could use pain-free techniques. And everyone with this is drastically different. So I wanted to start a business that focused on the individual. I focus on one-on-one training. I've done group work in the past, but my business is focused on one-on-one virtual training, just so we can really focus in on the individual and focus on pain-free movements that we can build on. Because ultimately, we want to get stronger. We want to keep our flexibility. We want to keep mobile, but I'm all about a pain-free range of motion, pain-free movements, and that was something I struggled with. And once I kind of found my solution, I wanted to share that with others across America.
Wonderful. And your social media clips are so good. You pose great questions, and you've been changing things up. So that's been really exciting too. So I'll put a link in the chat again to Alex Lavine Fitness. And lastly, for someone who is newly diagnosed, what is a word or phrase or something you would say to help them?
I think it's so important to be hopeful. I think be hopeful that we folks with ankylosing spondylitis, we become masters at adapting. We adapt to having to work when we're dealing with symptoms. If for folks that have families, for folks that are working out, we become experts at adapting. And through it, I feel like over the years, the more I've adapted to things, the more creative I've gotten, the more opportunities I've gotten. Like I was talking about with my story, I was just about basketball and weightlifting, heavy weightlifting, basketball, full throttle fitness, but I never looked out into health and different variations of health because I just thought, I just like basketball. But I learned I like a million different things. I like stretching and yoga, the sauna, the cold tub, meditation, another thing I would have never done probably if it wasn't for spondylitis, because I wanted to try these things to get better. But ultimately, the more I tried these things, the healthier I felt and the better I felt. And that's why I stuck with them. So be hopeful that we can use all these tools to help symptoms a little bit and live a healthy life.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being on SAA Storytellers, and thank you for all the help and support you give to folks living with AS, and SAA, you help us with all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks so much.
A big thank you to Alex for sharing his touching personal story. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight. I hope you're enjoying all these wonderful storytellers. If you'd like to learn more about Alex and his personal training business, just click on the link in the chat. Okay, before I introduce our final storyteller of the night, I want to share that we welcome your feedback. We do. Please take our post-SAA Storytellers presentation survey. This is also an opportunity to contact us with your interest in being a storyteller. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Our final storyteller of the night is Tracy Francis. Tracy Francis is currently the Director of Special Education with Woodford County Schools in Kentucky. She structures and assists in providing programming for students that receive special education services, which supports skill development that will allow them to become productive and successful citizens within their communities and society. While in this position, she serves many roles. One of them is the district administrator overseeing the mental health services in the district, and the 504 coordinator, preschool through 12th grade, as a teacher for DHH, and a special education facilitator, and worked as a special education consultant. Tracy has also published a children's picture book, The Fluffy Brown Pup That Met His New Family. Let's hear her story.
Hello, thank you for having me today. It's a privilege and an honor to share my story with all of you, especially one that spans 3 decades. Makes me feel a little old, but it has been a while, this experience and journey I've been on. It has definitely shaped the aspect of who I am as a person, and the things that I do in life and the world around me, the things I encounter in life. I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis and ulcerative colitis at the tender age 15, which was unheard of at the time. There wasn't Google back in the day. There were doctors. So I was diagnosed then. Since then, I have grown as a person, and the overarching diagnosis has grown as well to be known as autoimmune disorders. So autoimmune definitely defines a part of who I am, and it defines my health journey every day of my life, and it defines my children and my family as well, as far as what is a go on a daily and what is not. I'm 46 now. I was diagnosed at 15, like I said. And looking back, it was definitely a diagnosis back in the day. I didn't realize it was a path and would be a part of who I was going to be for the rest of my life. And again, it would impact my view on the world and my journey throughout the world. And it would impact who I would choose to have around me throughout my life and currently till today. I guess one of the things I'll say is that at 15, being a teenager and everything being a whirlwind, you're just new in high school and you want to do all the things. Your body's changing, and all of a sudden it betrays you. You've played sports your whole life. You are now fatigued. You're having these unpredictable flare-ups. You have this diagnosis out of nowhere. It is incredibly isolating. It's life-changing. And again, we didn't have Google. We had doctors. There were medical journals. I could have gone to the library and looked up things, or there was word of mouth. But as I was told by several doctors, it was rare at that time for someone my age to be diagnosed. So I didn't really have a whole lot of information on what I was living through, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So it definitely chipped away at my self-confidence. Didn't really know what to do with this body that betrayed me. Definitely wasn't comfortable in my own skin. Didn't know what it meant for my life. So there was a lot of scrutiny that came from the outsider viewing me, looking into my world. Was I really sick? Was I not sick? So there was both internal and external struggles there. And then there was, of course, those doctors that would work with me at a local hospital, and they were all interns and gorgeous doctors. And here was a 15-year-old having to worry about being modest or what that really looked like dealing with ulcerative colitis. So, looking back, there's a lot of different pieces to it, but feeling the burden on my family, feeling different next to my peers. They would be worried about prom dresses. I was worried about what my medication was going to look like for routine would look like for the next week. Those things were very impactful. At times it was very isolating. Negative emotions were high. Didn't get along with my mom. My mom was always there with me, but she took the brunt of a lot of my emotions. And my brother he was there, but he again took a lot of it and didn't say very much back. They were just very supportive, my parents and my siblings. But it changed me who I was, because I couldn't do those monumental things, such as even going to school, sitting in a classroom, or doing the sports that I had played my whole life. I can do basketball. I ended up graduating with a 4.0. I was an intermittent home hospital student. The principal had been my mom's principal. He understood that I was sick. He knew I'd been a 4.0 student, before my whole career in education. And I love being a student. And so looking back, I would tell my 15-year-old self, this isn't how life is always going to be. This is, you're going to deal with symptoms. You're going to deal with treatments. Things are going to evolve and change, but over time, you'll learn how to deal with it. There's going to be physical ups and downs. There will be periods of remission. There's going to be significant surgeries, but you will get through it. I think, I follow some very young ladies that, have been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis on TikTok, or other social media platforms. And they're speaking out and they can advocate for themselves, but I didn't have that. I think that's wonderful that they are, very confident in themselves to do that. And I wish someone have told me it was okay to do that. And my family did try, but it was just very trying. I had to learn, I was raised to be a very modest person. And I had to learn that modesty wasn't about being clothed. It was definitely about respecting your body and respecting the body you were given and living in that body and understanding how to accept those challenges with that, and being able to talk openly about the things you need for your body to work appropriately and what wasn't working appropriately. Talk about all the embarrassing things that no one wants to talk about as a 15-year-old. And then, looking back, I would tell myself, you're going to support students. You're going to support kids in elementary school, middle, and high schoolers that go through the same thing you're going through now. You're going to tell them how to get through this, and coworkers that are in their 20s, and there are social media platforms out there, but they really struggle still with the openness and just being modest and being embarrassed. They're just embarrassed about these things your body does that no one wants to talk about, right? So building that self-confidence and definitely being aware of who you are and being confident in who you are, being able to navigate life's obstacles. Resilience is a word that's been out and about for a couple of years now, very strong, but really it's about strength in any situation you're given, being able to be strong and knowing you're going to walk through that situation. There is an outside, there's outside obstacles you're always going to face, but there is an end to that at some point, and it's going to teach you something about life. And then just, I guess my overall testimony is to deal with what truly matters in life is your physical being and being able to accept who you are. And this illness has changed me, and definitely made me who I am in life and my purpose in life.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here on SAA Storytellers.
You're welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure.
And I was so excited to get your email, and I was really touched by your story and your medical journey. And I was so excited that you were able to come on today and talk a little bit about modesty and being diagnosed young and what that's like and what that experience is like to kind of be in the doctor's office and how that journey changes you. It's, it's not just some one-time appointment, right? It's the beginning
That's right. It is not a one-time thing.
And so many people and things have helped you on your journey to make you who you are today. And I was so excited to chat with you a little bit today about a very special group of individuals that have helped you out. You want to tell me a little about your special care team?
So my special care team is very furry. One is golden colored and one is black. They are my golden doodles. Two of them, Lucy and Archie.
And you had told me a little bit that they interact with you in certain ways to help you or motivate you, or
yeah. So Lucy is she's the older of the two. She will, if I'm not feeling well, she will lay at my feet all day. And she will get up periodically and nudge me to get up if I'm not feeling well. And then Archie, he's the baby, but he's really not a baby. He's 4. He was trained. I trained him to lay on me, so his face is facing me. So his front 2 paws are up on my chest, and then his body weight is across my body. So it vertically, that way it takes some of that pain away. The pressure just really helps with the pain I experience, the bone pain I experience from day to day, and especially if I'm having a significant flare up. Yeah,
absolutely. You literally took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, how do your dogs interact with you when there's a flare up? Do they predict one by chance? Do they figure out something's going on?
So Lucy definitely does. Archie, he's my goober dog. I'm not real sure if he predicts it, but at the point that it's there, he definitely is on point for it. But she's more of the predictor. If I see her laying around my feet, or she'll stand to the side of me a lot on the seat I sit in. We all are we're creatures of habit. We all sit in the same seats at our homes. If she comes to that one side, I know something's up. So she was not trained to do that. She's just been there with me through all of it since she was a puppy. So
what was it like in your life at some time when you didn't have these pets around and you had this kind of pain? I mean, have you noticed a difference over time?
So yes, without them, I was definitely more emotional about my days, because your husband or your significant other goes off to work. Your children go off to school. You're supposed to be at work. And I love work. I'm a workaholic. So if I had to stay home, I felt really bad about that emotionally. So my doodles, my fur babies, keep me settled on what my physical limitations really are. If it's to get up and go to the bathroom that day, or get up and get myself a drink of water, or to let them out and do the same for them, then it's been a successful day some days. And that's just the way it has to go. That's not every day, but it definitely is on a flare up. So
do you foresee yourself always having some sort of pet with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I will always have a bigger dog. I've had smaller animals, and I love my little lap dogs. But I'll probably always have a golden doodle, to be honest, because I grew up in the country. I've had all kinds of dogs. Okay. Any kind of breed you want. My dad was very generous with us, with animals. But they are just more in tune to, I think, physical needs, and that's my personal experience. I don't have any scientific research on that, but that's my personal experience with all the different breeds I've ever been around. So
I think you really speak for a lot of people living with AS, and how much they love their pets, and how much their pets get them outside of themselves, or motivate them to do something during the day that they normally wouldn't do, or just have interaction. Maybe that's the interaction for the day is with the animal, right? It gets them walking, or oh my gosh, Tracy, thank you so much for being part of this project, for sharing a little bit about yourself. Is there one word you would say to someone, or phrase, that was newly diagnosed?
Dig into your strength. It is there. It's just hiding.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that's a wonderful way to leave this interview and our time together. Thank you so much for being part of this and helping out SAA. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Many thanks to Tracy for sharing her touching and motivating story. And thank you so much for being part of SAA Storytellers. If you'd like to see the children's book that she wrote, just click the link in the chat. Wow, what a wonderful group of storytellers tonight. Sarah Gustwiller, Whitney Young, Alex Lavine, and Tracy Francis. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for being brave and sharing your personal journeys with us. I hope you will check out the archived webpage that has previous SAA Storytellers Your Stories on Stage. Will also be available for replay on the SAA YouTube channel. Thank you so much for helping us to create community and empathy through the power of story. I love storytelling. I hope it's obvious. And it's a pleasure to share my passion for it with you tonight. Another big thank you to Bristol Myers Squibb for helping to make this space possible. I'll put the link in the post show feedback survey in the chat again, just in case you'd like to connect with us. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.